Hi, this is Anil from Learning Led Education and welcome to another tutorial on Java programming language. So in this tutorial, we're going to be learning about the static class members. We're going to learn about the static class properties and also we're going to learn about static methods. So here, for the demonstration purpose, I have created this static project in my Eclipse IDE, and then I have this oops package inside my source folder, and then I have two classes called student and tutorials inside my oops package, and I have this main method inside my tutorial class. So now all of you know that we can have the class members. For example, let me have a couple of class members here inside this student class, and let me call it as a name, and let's say int age. Now this name and age are gonna be the instance members. What I mean by that is, whenever we're gonna create an object of the student class, each objects are gonna contain this name and age properties, and also these properties are gonna be independent of each other from one object to another object. So the name property of one object is going to be independent of the name property of another object which is created from this class. So these are called as the instance variables because they are available only from the instances of this class, and also they're going to be specific to an instance or an object. Alright, now what if we want to have a class member which is shared by all the objects that we're gonna be creating from this class? So at that time we can have the static class members. We can have the static class properties, or the static variables inside the classes, and also we can have the static methods. So first we're gonna learn about the static class properties, or the static variables. So first of all, these static properties are going to be shared by all the instances that we're going to create from the class, and also we can access the static properties without creating an object from the class. So first here, let me define a static variable, and just like the way we define the variables, first we need to specify the access specifier where the static member that we're gonna create is accessible. So here I'm gonna use the public access specifier. If you want, you guys can use the protected or the private or the default access specifier. And then we need to specify the static keyword. This is important. This static keywords indicates that this class member is gonna be a static property which is gonna be shared by all the instances of this class, and we don't need to create an object to access it. Alright, then we need to specify the data type. So here let me say integer type, and let me say I'm gonna create a class member which is gonna store the number of students. So let me call it as num students. Now this num student is gonna be a static class member, and because of that I can use this class member without creating an object. So all of you know that in the previous tutorials, when we have the normal class members or the instance class members, at that time we need to create an object from that class to access them. But now when we have the static properties, we don't need to create an object. So if it is confusing, let me create a class quickly, and let me call it as parents. Alright, and then here let me have a property, let's say string name. Alright, now this parent class has this normal property name, and this is gonna be the instance property. What I mean by that is, if you want to use this name property, then you need to create an object from this parents class. But if I come back to this student class, now for this num students property, we don't need to create an object because it is static, and that's why we can access that without creating an object. So now inside my tutorial class I can access this num students. So to do that, we need to write the class name. It's gonna be student, and then we need to use the dot operator, and then we need to specify the property. So here num students. So I can store any value inside it. So the difference between the static class property and the normal or the instance property is that for the instance property, if you want to access that, then you need to create an object, and that instance property is gonna be specific to an instance. And for the static properties, they're gonna be shared by all the objects that we're gonna create from this class. So we're gonna learn about that in a moment, but now just remember that a static class property is going to be shared by all the instances of that class. Alright, now here we have this num students. Just like the way for other class properties, if we don't initialize these properties, then they're going to contain the default values assigned by Java. I have made a tutorial on that. If your property or this class member is of reference type, then it's going to contain a null value. And if it is of numeric type, then it's going to contain 0. And similarly for the other types, it's going to contain the default values. So here, since it is of numeric type, it's going to contain a default value of 0. So just to demonstrate that, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to remove this statement and I'm going to use a println statement, and I'm going to access that. So first we need to write the class name, which is student, and then the property. So I'm just going to run this. And now you guys can see 0 is printed out. Alright, now the next thing that I want you guys to teach you is, as I told you before, the static class members are going to be shared by all the objects that we're going to create from this class. So because of that, what we can do is we can write a program which is going to remember how many objects that we have created from this class. So just to demonstrate that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a constructor here. So it's going to be public, then the class name, which is going to be student, and let me have the default constructor. And here what we're going to do is we're going to increment the value of this num students. So it's going to be num students plus plus, and also we're going to initialize this here. It's not necessary because by default it's going to contain a value of 0, but now we're just going to initialize it, and this initialization will take place only once, when this class will be loaded. And then we're just going to use a println statement inside our constructor, and we're going to say this is the, and then we're going to say num students object created from this class. Alright, now we need to use a dot operator here with the out. Alright, now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create the objects of this student class. So here let me create an object. So let's say student Anil equal to new student, and then we're gonna create another one, student Srish equal to new student, and then I'm gonna save this and I'm gonna run this. And now you guys can see here we have this 0 which is printed out from this println statement, and then we have created two objects from this student class. At that time we have called the constructor, and that's why this is the one object created from this class that will be printed out when we create the Anil object. And then when we create the Srish object, it says this is the second object created from this class. So here what happened is, this num student is going to be a class resource which is shared by all the instances that we're going to create from this class. So at that time, when we create the Anil object, this num student's value is incremented, it's going to contain 1. And then when we create the Srish object, this value is going to be incremented again, and it's going to contain 2. Alright, now the next thing that I want you guys to teach you is, just like the way we have these static class properties, we can have these static methods. So now here let me create a method which is going to be static method. So first we need to write the access specifier, let's say public, then we need to write the static keyword, then we need to write the return type, and then the method name. So let me call this method as how many students. Now this how many students method is gonna return the number of objects that we have created, or the number of students that we have created from this student class. So here I'm going to use the println statement, and I'm going to say there are, and then I'm going to append num students, then we're going to say students. Alright, now we have this static method, and now to call this static method we don't need to create an object from this class. What I mean by that is, here I'm just gonna remove these two object creation statements. So now we can call this how many students method without creating an object of the student class, because it is a static member. So here to call that static method we need to write the class name first, which is student, then we need to use a dot operator, and then we need to write the method. And I'm gonna run this here, and now you guys can see here there are 0 students. Alright, now what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a couple of objects. So it's gonna be student Anil equal to new student, and then we're gonna say student Srish equal to new student. Alright, now I'm gonna run this program, and now you guys can see there are 2 students. So now here we have accessed this static method by using the class name. Now one thing to remember is, when you have these static members in a class, you should access the static members by using the class name, because they're gonna be the class resources which are gonna be shared by all the instances or the objects that we're gonna be creating from that class. Alright, now the next thing that I want you guys to teach you is, what if we're gonna have some instance variables in the class where we have the static members. So here let me have a couple of instance variables. So public, and let me say name, and then public int age. Alright, so now we have a couple of instance variables, then we have a static variable, or the class properties, and then we have a static member. We're gonna have some instance, or the normal methods. So let's say public void introduce, and here we're just gonna print out using the println statement that hey and then I'm gonna append the name property, and then I'm gonna append some string, and I'm gonna say and I am, and we're gonna append the age, and then we're gonna say years old. Alright, now what we're gonna do is we're gonna initialize these instance members of the objects. So here we're gonna initialize the Anil objects instance members. So it's gonna be anil.name equal to Anil, and then anil.age equal to 24, and similarly Srish.name equal to Srish, and then we're gonna initialize the .age property. So it's gonna be age equal to 25. Alright, okay, I have written shrr, so we're gonna have the ee here. Alright, now we have initialized the instance members of this Anil and Srish objects, and then here what happens is this introduce method, which is the instance method, is gonna be available from this Anil and Srish objects, and to call this static method we need to use the class name. We need to call them by using the class, because it's the class resource. And also this name and age properties are gonna be specific to the instances that we're gonna create, and this num students, which is the static property, which is gonna be shared by all the objects, and also it's a class resource, so we need to access it by using the class name. So here what we're gonna do is we're gonna call the anil.introduce method, and then we're gonna call the introduce method on Srish object, now I'm gonna run this program. Now you guys can see this 0 is from this println statement, which is a default value which will be stored in the static property when we load the class. And since this num students is of numeric type, the default value is 0. Then we have created this Anil object from the student class, and at that time we are calling this constructor, and that's why it prints out this is the first object created from this class. And then we have created another object called Srish from the student class, and that's why it prints out this is a second object created from this class. And then we have initialized the object's properties for the Anil object and for the Srish object, and then we have called the introduce method on Anil and Srish objects, and that's why it's gonna print out, hey, I'm Anil and I'm 24 years old, and then hey, I'm Srish and I'm 25 years old. And then we have called the how many students, which is the static class member, by using the class name, and at that time it's gonna print out there are 2 students. So now there are some restrictions for the static methods. So the restriction for the static methods is that they can only call the other static methods. So here we have this how many students, which is a static method. So from this method I can only call the static methods. Since it is a class resource and we can access it without creating an object, we can only call the static methods. So if I try to call the introduce method here, then we're gonna get the error. So it says cannot make static reference to the non-static method introduce. So from a static method you can only call the static methods. The next restriction is gonna be the static methods can only access the static properties or the static data. So here from this how many students method, which is a static method, we can only access this num students property. I can't access the name property. For example, if I try to access here, for example, name equal to yeah or anything, then we're gonna get the error. So here it says cannot make static reference to the non-static field name. So we can't access the non-static properties inside the static methods. Alright, the next restriction is that the static methods can't refer to this or super keywords. We're gonna learn about them in the upcoming tutorials, and just remember that we can't use the this or super keyword inside the static methods, because they're gonna be associated with the objects that we're gonna create from these classes, and that's why we can't access them inside the static methods. Now to talk about the normal methods, we can access the static methods inside the normal methods, and because of that, if I want, I can call this how many students method in this introduce method. So just to demonstrate that, I'm just gonna call how many students in my introduce method. So I'm write how many students. If you want, you can use a class name here, for example student. It's optional, you can directly call it inside this class. So either you can use this class name, then the dot operator, then the static method, or you can directly call the static method without using the class name. Inside that class it's valid. Alright, now I'm gonna run this, and now you guys can see here from this introduce method of this Anil object, it's gonna print out, hey, I'm Anil and 24 years old, and it says there are 2 students. From the introduce method of the Srish object, it says, hey, I'm Srish and I'm 25 years old and there are 2 students. And then again we have called the how many students method separately by using the class name in this tutorials class, and that's why it's gonna print out there are 2 students. Alright, now the one last thing that I want you guys to teach you in this tutorial is gonna be about this main method. So you guys can see here, this main is a static method. So because of this static method, the Java can load this main method without the help of an object, and our program can start execution. If the static methods were not available, then to use a method we need to create an object of that class, and to create that object we need to have another class, and we need another object, and the chain is going to continue. But here, thanks to these static methods, because of that we can call a method without creating an object. So this main method is gonna be the best example for the static methods. So when the Java class is gonna be loaded, at that time the static class members are gonna be available. So the Java can directly call this main method, and our program can start the execution. So this is it, guys. This is about the static class members. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. If you guys get any doubt, don't hesitate to comment. And also, if you guys think that you guys have learned something from this tutorial, then please like this video and share it with your friends. And also you guys can tweet me on Twitter at learninglad.edu, and also you guys can like my Facebook page at facebook.com/learninglad. And once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.